What's the first call most owners make when they decide to transition? It's the wrong one. Watch till the end of this to find out how much it costs and what to do instead. Let's start with the mistake that many business owners make about their transition. I know this well because I almost made this exact same mistake. When they decide it's time to sell, transition, find a larger partner, they go back into that Rolodex of calls they've received from acquirers, and they call one of those acquirers back. Then that acquirer starts to talk to them about what it would look like for them to be a part of their company. And then that acquirer guides them that the best thing to do now is to sign an NDA so that we can look at information and we can get an offer back to you. And the way it would sound from an acquirer, it's like it's a couple-week process for them to get an offer to you and you really understand what your value is. And everything just seems to be good. And look, these acquirers are good. They are pros. They will make you feel like you are the king or the queen of the day. Now, what they would like nothing more is for you to go down this road with them and them only. That's why they want you to sign an NDA, because once you sign a non-disclosure, there is an unwritten rule that you have to continue moving forward with them. They're going to be hounding you for more information. And this is the big mistake. I almost made this same mistake way back when in 1992, when I and my partners decided that, well, this would be a good time to consider making a move. So I called one of the acquirers that I had been talking to, and I almost signed an NDA. We talked to our consultant, and the consultant said, no, do not do that. I was glad because when we were finally ready to make the move sometime in 1995, early 96, we got a valuation of the business. We put everybody on the same line at the same time. There were far less acquirers at that time than there are now, but we did not end up selling to the company that I had talked to and would have gone down that road by myself had I not talked to the consultant. So this is a mistake that a lot of owners make, and it's natural. I understand, because when an acquirer is talking to you, they make it sound pretty straightforward to go from where you are talking to us on the phone today to an actual closing and actually a transaction occurring. And look, we have the utmost of respect from all the acquirers in this country and in this industry, but they are great salespeople. Okay. That's their job. Their job is to pick practices off and to keep them out of a process. Again, this is really a mistake. So how could you proceed, and what does it actually cost? What it will cost is what we find when owners who have done this, and that's how we know pretty intimately what the costs are. First is that if that company, that acquirer, has any larger transaction that comes in addition to yours, their focus is going to go to that transaction because they know you are only working with them. If there's any kind of problem with their private equity, or if there's some kind of a capital call that happens, anything that happens in that company, your deal is going to be delayed. The other reason why it actually costs you a lot is because, think about this. If a therapist comes to you and says, you're the only job that I can take. I only want to work for you. I'm not talking to any other companies out there. I just want to come work for you. Or that same therapist comes to you and says, Look, I've been doing my due diligence. I've talked to a number of other practices in and around this market. So I have a really good idea on what a competitive salary is for me. Which of those two are you going to make a stronger offer for first? You're going to make a stronger offer to the guy or the girl who told you that they've been talking to others in and around your market, and they have a good idea of what is market in terms of their salary. It's the same thing as it relates to acquirers. When acquirers know there are other companies involved, other suitors, other acquirers involved in a process, they are going to put their best foot forward, and they're going to put their best foot forward first. So what does this cost you? It could cost you a number of things. If you go through this process with one acquirer and you never get to the finish line, time is one of your greatest commodities. You don't have time to spend time with one acquirer when you may not get to the finish line. I promise you, you don't. It could cost you structure. As you go through the process, the structures that they may be presenting to you, you have no base of comparison. And the base of comparison is what gives you power. You don't have that base of comparison because you're only looking at this company's. And I will also tell you that if you personally think that you want to try to bring in more companies after you've gone down the road with the one company, they're at different time frames. One company is going to be at the very beginning of the process. The other one's going to be at the middle of the process. The other one might be close to the end of the process. Companies won't wait on you, okay? So when you only have one acquirer, the other thing it costs you is the steering wheel. What do I mean by that? When one company knows that you are only working with them, they have full control of that steering wheel and the gas pedal and the brake pedal, by the way, okay? So what you want to do is take control of that steering wheel. And I'm going to tell you how you do that. And that then puts the acquirer, maybe they're on the front seat, but maybe based on other acquirers, they get moved to the back seat and then they want to get to the front. You can see where I'm going with this. So it costs you structure. It costs you time when you go down the road with one acquirer. It also can very much cost you the ability to have flexibility in what you're going to be doing for the rest of your career. These companies all have different structures as it relates to how you will be treated, as well as what your role will be going forward. So it could cost you that. And that's why, again, it's really a mistake to go down the road with just one acquirer. So how should you do it if we don't do it in the way I just described? When you have an inkling, any inkling, just a nudge, okay, that you may want to sell, you may want to transition, you may want to join a larger partner, all three are somewhat synonymous. At that point in time, you should go have a professional who does transactions in the rehab industry do a valuation for you. I will tell you to be careful with going to an accountant, CPA, even a firm that does fair market value appraisals, because market information, what other companies are selling for in the market, it's not publicly available. So these companies will only be going to the publicly traded companies, which, by the way, there's only one of those left. And that publicly traded company doesn't tell you what the EBITDA was, so you don't really know what the multiple was on a deal. And on all the private equity deals that are out there, there's no place you can go to find those deals. So a company that does deals routinely will be able to do that value and make it a very much of a market value, meaning in this current market, what would your business sell or transition for? That's the key. Once you've had that valuation, you can clearly see whether or not you are at the market where you should be, you are below the market in your value, or maybe you're above the market in your value. But that expert should be able to tell you whether your value is something that will be competitive in this current market, or is there work that you should do to drive your value and get it higher? We do what I just described to you in something called an outside-in assessment. And you can click below and go right to our website and see what that looks like. After that, and once you have a good understanding of your value in this market, the next thing to do is, with an advisor, is to run a professional process. That is taking all the acquirers who would have an opportunity to acquire your business. They've been pre-qualified, so we know they have the capital, et cetera. You run a competitive process. You put all of those acquirers on the same starting line at the same time and with the same information. You drop the checkered flag and you take them all through a process. Now, they will make a few different offers to you before they would actually get to a finish line. First thing they're going to do once they have all your data is they're going to do what's called an indication of interest. It's a preliminary, here's what a deal with us would look like. But when you can compare, remember I said in the beginning, when you go down the road with one acquirer, there's no opportunity for comparison. Now you can compare and contrast a number of different indications of interest. That adds enormous value to what you're going to get in the end. Once you go through those and we determine which one has the highest value, we then determine who's going to go to management meetings, who's going to meet you one-on-one in person, face-to-face. Obviously, this is all under confidentiality, where you get to ask the hard questions and they're going to be able to ask questions too. We do that with a number of companies who have given us those indications of interest. Then you get to see the next step, which is a letter of intent. I will tell you 99 times out of 100, the value that is shown in the letter of intent is a higher value than what was shown in the indication of interest. Why? Because now they've had an opportunity to meet you. They've been able to hear directly from you how you see your company growing with them in the future. And they know they are in a process, and a competitive process, because you will probably do this at an airport, hotel, boardroom, whatever it might be. And they know that there's a time frame for their meeting because they know other meetings are happening. So there is a level of negotiation before we even start negotiating, because they want to make it to the next step in the process. Once you get down to 2 or 3, then it's a matter of, we go back with what you want from this transaction and who gives you that best, and we get the best deal out of that company. That is the way that you put the years and years of hard work that you have put into the biggest asset. When I say the biggest asset, the biggest financial asset that you will probably ever have in your entire career is your business. And you have just put that through a professional process to get you the best deal, the best transaction with the best cultural fit. Gets you to the finish line, and it gets you to the finish line successfully. So again, if you would like to have more conversations with me about this, just click. We'll get in contact with you. And I appreciate your time. Thank you, and have a great weekend.